King Charles was already bracing himself for another painful message from Harry, but he definitely didn't see this coming. William's name stamped right at the bottom of an order William had zero clue about. Just like that, a totally routine security check turned into a full-blown royal panic. Harry was standing right outside a restricted gate at Windsor, demanding to be let into a private strategy meeting. And he was acting like he had the future king's explicit blessing. Then Charles hit the last line of the paper. Man, the king lost it before anyone even opened their mouth. Look, this Windsor meeting was meant to sort out future royal duties and keep things clear during a super touchy moment for the family. Prince of Wales isn't just a fancy title, it's the heir's title. Put that on an instruction, and palace staff are going to think, oh, the future king greenlit this. But Harry wasn't even invited. Everything goes through proper security and the household team. No exceptions. So Charles looks at the paper again. It literally says Harry is coming in on behalf of the Prince of Wales. Except William signed nothing, sent nothing, and had no idea his brother was anywhere near Windsor. Charles slammed his hands on the table. Who authorized him to use my son's name? Dead silence. Harry hadn't just shown up asking for a favor. He turned up flexing borrowed authority. Meanwhile, out at the gate, Harry was standing his ground. He told the guard his title should be opening doors for him, not shutting them. Inside, his dad thought he was pulling a fast one on the crown itself. William walked in a bit later, picked up the paper, and just stared at it in dead silence. Right away, he recognized the exact phrasing from an old private message, basically a personal effort they'd made a while back to keep lines open between the brothers. Somebody had copied that exact wording, word for word, to make this fake authorization look totally legit. You could see William's face go from totally confused to complete disbelief. A private, personal promise had been weaponized into an official command. Charles wasn't having it. He ordered the gates to stay locked and told the staff to track down every single email, copied phrase and person, attached to that document before Harry talked to a single person inside. And then came the twist that made it personal. Harry was relying on a promise made months ago. One William thought everyone knew was off the table. So while Charles is demanding answers, and Harry's standing outside refusing to leave, this stopped being a fight about getting through a gate. It turned into something way uglier, which brother actually got stabbed in the back first. At the end of the day, you've got three guys hurting for totally different reasons. Charles sees a family mess turning into a full-blown crisis for the monarchy. William feels like his authority was stolen and weaponized, and Harry feels like the last door just got slammed in his face. None of them thought they were the bad guy, but only one title got abused, and only one guy was going to have to decide if family first still applied. For years, Charles tried to keep being a dad separate from being the king. But every time Harry called, those two worlds crashed right back together, forcing him to pick between his kid and his job. And this time, the stakes were huge. Prince of Wales isn't just a fancy title. It's the direct heir. Orders signed with that name affect security, schedules, everything palace staff do. Meanwhile, William's sitting there alone with the paper in front of him. He keeps reading it over, trying to find some innocent explanation. But the wording is just too precise. Harry knew exactly which phrases would make it sound official. William slowly turned the paper face down. His brother hadn't just asked for a favor. He had grabbed the authority William spent his whole life preparing to carry and used it against him. So security finally moved Harry away from the gate and dumped him in a secure holding room. Anger was keeping him on his feet, but you could tell shock was starting to set in. He kept trying to explain himself to one of the officers, insisting he didn't steal anyone's authority. He was just holding William to a promise he'd made. The officer just stared back, dead silent, leaving Harry alone with this terrifying thought. What if that promise isn't real anymore? Meanwhile, Charles starts getting snippets of old text chains between the brothers about a possible sit-down. On their own, none of those messages gave Harry a free pass. But if you stitched them together just right, it made it look like William was expecting him. Charles got the big picture instantly. A private family chat had been twisted around to look like a green light from palace officials. That's when William finally laid it all out. Months ago, he had offered Harry a secret sit-down at Windsor, but it came with massive strings attached. Totally off the record. No media, no leaks, no palace press releases. But that offer vanished into thin air the second details from another personal chat got leaked to the press. Charles walked into William's room alone. No aides, no suits. He just stood there and asked his eldest point, blank, "Is there any part of Harry's story that actually holds water?" William looked down at the document, then looked his dad straight in the eye. "Not the part where he used my title," he said. Boom. That line killed the immediate debate, but it reopened a massive old wound. See, to understand why Charles lost his mind over this, you have to go back to the night Harry was warned to never throw William's title around again. Months before the gate drama, William gave Harry one last lifeline. No cameras, no statements, no palace spin, just two brothers in a room hashing out years of bad blood. But that chat ended with a line in the sand so sharp, nobody could misread it. Problem was, Harry walked out thinking the door was still cracked open. William walked out knowing he'd locked it and thrown away the key. Charles had actually pushed for that original meeting, because he was terrified this feud was going to wreck the monarchy's reputation. William only agreed on one condition. It stayed personal. He was showing up as a brother, not as the Prince of Wales. William started out calm. He told Harry, "Look, we can have a relationship, but only if what we say stays between us, and you don't turn personal favors into public leverage." But Harry didn't want a small olive branch. He wanted the whole tree. He asked William to restore his clearances, get him an official role, and steamroll the palace staff who kept shutting him down. The room went cold instantly. William pushed his chair back and laid it out. Love and affection don't give you political muscle. He explicitly warned Harry to never use their private bond as proof of official backing, because one fake claim made in the heir's name wrecks security, confuses the staff, and makes a brother's promise look like a royal decree. Harry blew up, venting years of pent-up rage. He told William, "You inherited everything. The crown, the protection, the power to decide who's in and who's out." He accused William of hiding behind protocol just to bully him. William shot back that protocol wasn't a weapon. It was there to stop their personal drama from burning down the house. When Harry left that night, he took something with him. According to internal reports Charles read later, Harry hung onto a printed scheduling memo with the official Prince of Wales letterhead. It was just a note saying a private chat was being considered. It didn't grant security clearance or promise a job. But months later, that exact wording was recycled for the paper at the gate. Charles had no idea the paper still existed. William thought every copy had been shredded, which is why seeing it again felt like a calculated hit, not a desperate plea. Back then, William had looked him in the eye and said, "You can talk to me as my brother. You can never speak for me as the heir." Harry had walked out without a word, and now those exact same words had come back to haunt them. Charles finally agreed to bring Harry inside, not as a prince making a grand comeback, but as a son who had to explain why he'd crossed a massive line. When Harry walked into the room, nobody welcomed him. Charles was standing behind the table. William was staring out the window, and that fake paper was sitting right between them like evidence in a courtroom. No advisors to smooth things over, no cameras forcing them to play nice. Harry came in wanting a way back into the royal fold, but ended up facing a father who was way past disappointed, and a brother who was totally done protecting him. They only let him in after he handed over his phone and agreed to one condition. This meeting gave him zero promises about getting his job, duties, or status back. Charles picked a small private room instead of a formal stateroom, because he wanted his son to answer his family before it turned into an official disciplinary thing. Charles slid the paper across to Harry and asked him point blank if he knowingly approved using William's title. Harry didn't even deny it. He argued that William had once promised him a private way back, saying he was just stepping through an open door. Charles slammed his hand on the table, instantly shutting down all the excuses. He made it clear, a brotherly invite is not an order from the heir. Harry went completely quiet. Charles wasn't just mad about a broken rule. He saw a personal family favor being weaponized into official power, and he knew that if he let it slide once, it would undermine William's authority forever. William finally turned around and confronted him, accusing Harry of taking one small moment of brotherly compassion and trying to turn it into official clout. He reminded him that the old invite had conditions, limits, and zero to do with palace clearance. Harry fired back that compassion without real action was basically rejection, saying William offered him hope. Then hid behind his title the second things got uncomfortable. Then Harry spilled how the order actually came together. In a recorded account from the meeting, he admitted a former palace insider reconstructed the document. The insider knew how royal paperwork was formatted and figured staff would obey the Prince of Wales title without asking questions. Charles demanded a name. Harry refused, saying snitching would destroy the last connection, willing to help him come home. Charles took off his glasses and set them down next to the paper. In a low, heavy voice, he warned Harry that keeping quiet was just another choice against the family. That's when they noticed a reference number at the bottom of the page, tied to a dead office account. An old royal system that should have been shut down years ago. Harry's confession proved the emotional betrayal. But this forgotten account showed something way scarier. This scheme went deeper into palace operations than anyone thought. Harry held the paper, but he wasn't the one pulling the levers behind the scenes. In the monarchy, a title only works if staff actually honor it. Now Charles had to figure out if his son was just playing make-believe, or if an insider had opened a back door for him. That distinction meant the difference between a messy family fight and a massive security breach. While Charles had ultimate power as king, William actually owned his office, schedules, and every single official use of his title. Palace security was strict. Guards had to match records and current approvals before opening any gate. That exact safety net was the only reason Harry got stopped in his tracks. William took the whole thing personally. He told his dad that private forgiveness meant nothing if his title could just be copied and manipulated. He wasn't guarding his ego. He was protecting the system staff relied on during security risks and emergencies. Charles hesitated before ordering a full sweep. He knew searching the system might expose former employees, buried loyalties, and the secret channels he had personally kept open just in case Harry needed to reach him. Those back channels were made out of love. Now they looked like a liability. The king sat next to his private secretary, as the dead account history popped up on a secure screen. When Harry's name showed up in an archived text thread, Charles closed his eyes. It hurt because it tied his son directly to a pathway that shouldn't have existed. Still, he gave the order to keep digging. Turns out, the reference number belonged to a temporary account from back when William was transitioning his staff. It never issued real passes, but an old admin contractor still had access to the templates. System logs proved this contractor hit up Harry's contact 3 days before the gate scene, discussing exact wording, formatting, and which title would get the fastest reaction from guards. Charles didn't hesitate anymore. He signed an order shutting down every dead account on the spot and severing every informal line connected to Harry. Harry expected them to be furious. He expected a massive punishment. What he never saw coming was his dad totally erasing the last secret bridge between them. Within minutes, the palace systems were locked down tight. But you could see the absolute devastation hit Harry's face. The second he realized his final private connection to Charles was gone forever. He'd come to Windsor thinking showing up in person would force a talk they couldn't run from. Instead, every minute inside stripped another piece away. His insider contact was suspended. His entry was denied, and the old back door account was wiped clean. Then came the kicker. He was told to pack it up and leave through the same security gate under escort. No private chat, no follow-up, no promises Charles would ever hear another plea. Trying to force his way in had completely backfired. Charles's crackdown went into effect right away. Security got strict orders to reject anything relying on old titles, old texts, family lingo, or verbal promises that couldn't be verified. William's office issued a lockdown notice stating that nobody touches the Prince of Wales title without direct digital green lights from his current senior team. Harry took the news in complete silence. He'd brought a personal letter for his dad, but the whole thing collapsed before he could even hand it over. The anger vanished from his face, replaced by total shock. Everything had been ruined because he pulled William's name into it. He came looking for a way in. Instead, he made them trust him even less. Harry practically begged Charles for just 10 minutes alone, his voice completely cracking. But the king shut it down. No private chats while Harry was still protecting the insider who hijacked William's title. Harry reached inside his coat and pulled out a folded letter. He held it for a few heavy seconds, then slid it back, his hands noticeably shaking as he asked if Charles was even going to read it. The king told him quietly, "The letter goes through official channels, or it doesn't go at all." For the first time ever, Harry's private words to his dad had to go through formal palace mail. The love was still there, but getting to it was now locked behind red tape. Harry finally broke and gave up the insider's name on his way out, confirming it was a former staffer who knew William's office style inside out. A guard opened the exit. Harry took a step, then froze as the lock clicked shut behind him. William stayed inside, not even coming over to say goodbye. Later that night, Charles found the folded letter left on the table anyway. The official book was closed, but that abandoned letter posed one last gut-wrenching question. Could Charles separate being a broken-hearted dad from being the king? Long after the aides left, Charles walked back into the room. The fake pass was gone, taken into evidence, but Harry's letter was still sitting there. No officials, no guards, just a dad, his son's unread words, and the harsh reality that love couldn't undo the damage. Charles opened it, but he didn't read it alone. He asked William to come back down after the palace went quiet. No secretaries, no lawyers. Charles made one thing clear up front. Reading this doesn't change the security decision. This was personal, not official. Charles read it out loud. Harry admitted he used William's title because he was convinced a message with just his name on it would be thrown straight in the trash. He wasn't defending what he did. He was exposing how terrified he was. Harry felt so completely powerless that he thought borrowing authority was the only way to make his own family listen. William felt the anger flare up again, but this time mixed with something else. It genuinely creeped him out that Harry felt he had zero voice left in his own family. He said desperation explained it, but it definitely didn't excuse it. His title had been hijacked, and family trauma doesn't give you a free pass. Then Charles dropped a heavy truth on himself. He confessed that keeping those secret back channels alive over the years might have made Harry think the rules didn't apply to him when emotions ran high. Charles tried to save their bond, but instead, he accidentally taught his son that every locked door had a secret key. The letter laid out what Harry actually wanted. No public role, no restored duties, no official press release. Just one private, off-the-record sit, down with Charles and William where he wasn't treated like a rogue royal or a political problem. William listened, then set his ground rule. That meeting could happen one day, but only if Harry signed a paper promising he'd never ever pull the Prince of Wales card or use family secrets as leverage again. Charles folded the letter and tucked it into a plain wooden drawer instead of the official archive file. The words belonged to a father and son. The forged order belonged to the crown. By sunrise, the three of them had finally separated Harry's desperate plea from his public stunt. But outside Windsor, the world only saw the stunt, and everybody was already rushing to take sides. The real drama happened behind locked doors, but the fallout hit the press before breakfast. One document, one hijacked title, and one explosive reaction turned into a massive national debate over loyalty, desperation, and power. Half the public saw Harry as a son pushed to the edge after being cut off from every normal path home. The other half saw an unforgivable move to impersonate Britain's future king. Then a single front page locked the story in place. The palace put out a tight, careful statement confirming an unauthorized access attempt using the Prince of Wales title had been turned away, pointing out that using it without approval created a huge security risk and directly challenged the heir's authority. They also mentioned security protocols had been tightened up across the board. They didn't outright call Harry a fraudster, but every single line made one thing crystal clear: William had zero to do with it. Charles watched the morning news in total silence. He knew the world was seeing a strict monarch enforcing discipline, not a father who had just read his son's personal letter a few hours before. That private moment stayed hidden. His mercy was for his family. His decision was for the crown. William felt relieved that his office was officially protected, but it was a hollow victory. The future king was watching his entire relationship with his brother get dragged down into a public battle between the golden heir and the exiled prince. He'd defended his title, sure, but every headline was just a reminder of how broken they were. The story completely blew up when a major paper ran the words "Not in my name" right over a massive picture of Windsor's locked gates. Morning news shows were holding up the front page on live television, while crowds started gathering outside the castle. Some people defended Harry's desperation. Others insisted that being royal doesn't give you a free pass to fake an official order. A royal commentator summed it up best on television. Harry didn't just knock on the family door. He showed up holding William's key. That line went viral instantly, flooding social media, news broadcasts, and evening papers, turning a deeply personal family trauma into one iconic accusation. Public sympathy flipped again when palace staff confirmed in a off-the-record brief that Harry was just trying to get a private chat with his dad, not trying to sneak back into a working royal role. Suddenly, his motivation felt human, even if his method was totally out of line. Advisors pushed Charles to publicly throw the book at Harry, but he refused. He was going to protect William's title, but he wasn't going to publicly humiliate his younger son any more than the press already had. The gates and the headlines had delivered their verdict to the world. Now, Charles was going to hand down the only verdict that actually mattered inside the castle walls. In the end, Charles's final call didn't bring Harry back into the fold, but it didn't throw him away either. He refused to confuse love with permission, or punishment with holding a permanent grudge. Harry was still his son, but he'd never be allowed to weaponize someone else's title to force his way in again. William's authority was protected, palace rules were upheld, and the family, as bruised as they were, finally had a line drawn between personal forgiveness and official royal status. Charles sent off a formal ruling declaring the Windsor Pass invalid, calling out the use of William's title as totally unacceptable, and shutting down every informal route into the royal household for good. Harry was stripped of any hope for automatic entry, official duties, or speaking on behalf of working royals. But right below the official sign, off the king added a handwritten note just for Harry. Charles wrote that the bond between a father and his child wasn't broken for good. A private sit-down could still happen, but only after Harry accepted the terms and owned up to the damage he'd caused William. William agreed not to block that future chat. He got that personal forgiveness might happen down the road, but he put his foot down about letting it turn into a backdoor to official power. The Prince of Wales' office had to stay protected because staff and security needed to know whose orders were real. Harry sent back a signed acknowledgement. He admitted he acted without William's okay, and promised never again to use the Prince of Wales title. Palace jargon, private texts, or old family promises to force entry. That signature ended the war over who was to blame. It didn't fix the family, but it stopped the denial. Charles then approved the final cleanup. The insider was banned from royal systems forever. Every dead account was wiped, and the old security loophole was patched so no forgotten template could ever be used like that again. Harry read his dad's handwritten note alone. He set the official rejection letter on one side of the table and the personal note on the other. Finally, the reality set in. He hadn't been erased as a son, but he had lost his right to force his way back as a prince. The gates stayed locked. William kept his title, and Charles made his choice. The monarchy wouldn't bend, but the father would never stop loving his son.